Hey guys, on this week's episode of the Miles to Go podcast, powered by Thrifty Traveler, recording in 3 different places. This intro is coming to you from my home studio in Virginia. I was in Vegas when Richard and I recorded, talking about Hilton's new tiers and his impending trip to Dublin, and then a quick jump to Seattle where I caught up with Kyle Potter from Thrifty Traveler on their incredible Black Friday deal and what we think awards are going to look like in 2026. All that on this week's episode. Hey guys, welcome back to the Miles to Go podcast, joined by Mr. Kerr right before he heads over the seas to go to Europe. No, I don't think he'll be flying that plane there, although that would be cool. I don't think either one of us ever got to fly on a Concorde. For those that are listening, Mr. Kerr is pointing at the wonderful Concorde Lego model in the background. Mr. Kerr, we're going to talk a little bit about your trip overseas and some fun stuff from Hilton that has me scratching my head. And we're going to be joined by Kyle Potter from Thrifty Traveler, who's powering the show again this week to talk a little bit about their Black Friday deal and where they see the state of the industry right now. At time of recording, Mr. Kerr, I'm curious, mere 24 hours from departure, do you have an airline ticket booked?
I do. As of yesterday, I have 2 airline tickets booked there and back. As well as the interesting Hyatt glitch that I haven't brought. It's not a glitch, it's my fault, but it's not happened to me before. So we should talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, we should. I don't even know what we're talking about here. I love it. I love it when you throw me curveballs. I'm very excited to hear about it.
The curveballs.
Oh, God. You with the Kirk. Oh, God.
I have everybody built typing correct KERRECT, and I'm very proud of that. It only took 4.5 years, but that is the standard internal language now at that company I work at.
You should be really proud of that. They should not, but you should be proud of that.
It's just blunt force trauma. This just made it stick.
It's that, it's always a great way. Just use the brute force. I know you. All right. Well, a little bit of housekeeping. He is at Kerr Points on all the social media channels. I am at Pizza in Motion. You can text us or leave us a voicemail, 571-293-6659. And you can email us, ed@pizzainmotion.com. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about Dublin. I haven't been in a handful of years, and I know you struggle a little bit with flights, and so it sounds like we also have a little Hyatt stuff to go over. But tell us how you're getting to Dublin.
Yeah, this is a last-minute work trip that came together because of an opportunity from our friends over at British Airways, as well as we talked to car rentals a little bit. And I have a car rental technology platform based in Dublin, so 2 meetings came together, and 2 meetings is enough to get me across the Atlantic, but again, it was a week out, a little bit iffy it was going to happen. We had a family calendar planned for, over this weekend, as well as a Thanksgiving trip. So it was going to be a lot of time on the road for me, but we made it happen, man. But I'll tell you, I guess I underestimated how much the winter schedule is cut down versus the summer schedule, because options from New York to Dublin were surprisingly light. So United has 2 nonstops a day from Newark. Aer Lingus has a couple of nonstops from JFK and Newark, and then Delta has 1 nonstop from JFK. Look, man, I'll be honest. I'm not going across the Atlantic unless it's in the pointy end of the plane. I might do premium economy on the way back if that's all that was going to work. So United was looking at 200,000 miles one way in order to get up in the Polaris. And I couldn't do that, unfortunately. Bilt gives me a lot of leeway, but not that much leeway. And then I had 2 options coming back. And I checked this every day over the course of a week. I used, all the different tools out there. Point me, seat.aero, points, all this kind of stuff. We should maybe dive into that a little bit, because it's been a while since I really was in the crunch of I got to get this book because people are waiting on meeting times and I need a hotel and all this stuff. But here's what happened, man. I searched 24 hours ago from time of recording, and that 200,000 had dropped down to 150,000, which still pretty brutal, but that brought it into the realm of possibility from the business perspective. So I quickly did that. Of note, the early flight leaving 7:55 p.m. from Newark, landing at 7 a.m. is on a 777-200. And then the later flight leaving at 10:30 p.m. landing at 9:55 is on a 757. And I had sent you some text being what's the 757 experience like? And you say it's not that bad, but I'm not going across the Atlantic in the narrow body, mainly because I told you that hey, only a window seat was available, and I'm just not going to crawl over anybody on a transatlantic flight in order to get out of that seat. But you say it's not that bad. And I looked at do you use Aerolopa now that Seaguru is officially dead?
Sadly, yes. And I think Aerolopa is definitely a good resource. But it's not. I think the thing that's missing from Aerolopa is just the ability to add context if you're a user. People used to be able to leave seat reviews and say, hey, here's this little nuance. But anyway, I use Aerolopa.
So I could tell that they're angled back on the 75-200. Anyways, went with the earlier flight, man, and I'm taking off. Really the only problem with a 7:55 p.m. departure from Newark coming from Manhattan is
You're
the
laying
traffic.
before your bedtime.
Yeah. I am max getting 2 hours of sleep. I may not sleep at all because that flight is so short. Looking on FlightAware the last couple of weeks, it's been averaging about 6 hours and 15 minutes for the times where there's not a 6-hour taxi during the government shutdown, which fingers crossed, that's not what I'm in for tomorrow night. So yeah, 150,000 United miles for United Polaris over, again, like airtime, just over 6 hours. We're going to land early. Booked the Hyatt Centric, the Liberties there right in the city center of Dublin. There's a few other Mr. and Miss Smith properties, but the only Hyatt flagship or I guess branded property is the Hyatt Centric. Here's what happened, man. So originally I was going to fly overnight Thursday, land Friday morning, take a shower, jump into meetings all day and a dinner. But I was like, I just know myself now that I'll be miserable. So let's just go ahead and get over there Wednesday night. So I originally booked a Friday and Saturday night reservation, but then I added a single one-night reservation on to the front end, and rates had dropped significantly to where I got the prepaid rate was, I think, 160 euros in order to switch for the center of Dublin. Great. But apparently, man, what had happened is my old Hyatt card that was on file had expired. So I woke up to an email this morning that said, "Hey, Richard, this is Andrew from the Hyatt Centric Liberties. You booked a prepaid rate, but the card that you had on file failed payment. So if you don't want me to cancel this reservation in the next 12 hours, I need updated payment information." And I was like, I got a lot of questions just being in this
how did it get processed in the first place?
From the day job. Now I'm very familiar with the different kinds of hotel rates and how these payment flows go. And I was like, how in the world did this reservation get made if this card failed? It's the whole kind of like that. You guys are, so what I learned is that Hyatt is not checking the validity of these cards at the time of reservation, which goes to actually, we could get really nerdy about this, but ladies and gentlemen, prepaid hotel rates does not mean collect now at the time of booking rates. You can prepay it, but at any time up until that check-in window is up to the hotel of when to charge your card. My assumption is that at the time of booking for a prepaid rate, even though it's not a collect now rate, they still validate that the card's good because they've taken that room out of inventory. But here we are. We've learned, no, that's not the case with Hyatt. They're not validating that card, which now I just want to go in and put like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and see if you can make a reservation on that. But got it, sent that information over, and fingers crossed, man. It's super early, land at 7:30, but there's nothing I love more than going directly into a room and getting a shower and maybe a 2-hour nap after not sleeping at all. And then, they'll be perfect timing after I get a couple hour nap. It'd be lunchtime in Dublin. Everybody be waking up here on the East Coast, and I go to a full work day from the hotel room or the lobby or wherever for Thursday. So that's what, will happen. And then very quick, just to not draw this out anymore, I had 2 options to get home on Sunday in business class. Again, was going to do the premium economy if nothing open in business, but 70,000 Alaska miles, Dublin to Helsinki, and Helsinki to New York with a 3-hour layover. And I've really wanted to fly
the weird new
seat. I've really wanted to fly the weird new Finnair seat, but man, looking at it,
it really doesn't recline.
Yeah, it does. It's like a turn sideways and lay on this air couch thing or something like that. Yeah. Super intrigued. Unfortunately, with the family travel the next week, man, like it was going to I'm going from like a 7-hour transit time to like with the layover that was in there, it was going to be a very long day, not landing at Newark until 8 p.m. to go right into a full work day the next morning. I just couldn't do it, man. Like these are, and it makes me a little bit sad, right? Because these were the times where I used to jump on an opportunity like that just to make it. But looking at like I can land at Newark at noon and be back at the apartment to watch the Falcons game with Thomas, or I can not land until 8 o'clock, be exhausted, fight everybody getting back into the city after the end of the weekend, and then try and go into a full Monday before flying again on Tuesday. Like I just can't do that. Like I just cannot.
You had
do
me
that
right
anymore.
up until the Falcons game.
Well, the good Michael Penix is out. We're back to Kirk Cousins now. Apparently, Penix is out for the season. So, how we've not fired our coach, that's a whole other conversation. Like I don't know. Anyways, Thomas is really excited about it. Therefore, I'm excited about it. So, I'm going to take the nonstop back. It again was on United. This time, I think it had dropped to like 133,000 miles or something weird like that. Back on the 777 again to come back home. So I was looking at the prepaid menu. So we got round trip United Polaris, which I've talked about on the podcast. One of my favorite transatlantic hard products. Hopefully a couple hours of sleep and then right into the Hyatt. Wrote the Hyatt guys twice now to say, can I get the early check-in? We know that they never confirm it, but they're usually like, there are only a handful of times that I've showed up to a Hyatt as a globalist and not been able to check in. So fingers crossed, man, that I can jump in. I've told him, like, I don't care if it's the worst room in the hotel. Like, I do not care.
Yeah.
Like, just let me get in there and get a shower and a nap. So I don't know. Fingers crossed, man. We'll see how it goes. But that is about the shortest transatlantic flight that you can do from Newark to Dublin. And I'm not really looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't fault most of what you went through there. In logic, I still think I would have taken the 757 flight because I value the sleep and the later departure. But I get it. I mean, it's an older seat, but
Probably means more comfortable these days, right? I mean, like,
I see. So here's the thing. Like I'm an old man, as you know, and if I sleep on like some of the really firm business class seats on my side, like my leg goes numb. And I find, like, with Polaris, like, it's a really firm seat and they don't do mattress pads. So if you use one of the 2 blankets they give you as a mattress pad, you got a little bit of cushion. But I mean, it's a really firm seat. And I first world problems for sure.
I'm gonna really try the Pizzarella approach of, like, I'm gonna eat in the Polaris lounge really quick tomorrow, and then I'm gonna get on the plane. And the second that thing takes off the ground, the seat's going back, and I'm gonna try and crash. And hopefully, man, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I should have sent you these before you left. God knows I should reach out to them from a sponsorship standpoint because it's one of the greatest things that I've started taking. But Dream Shot is made by a company called The Feed, which focuses on endurance athletes. Magnesium, cherry juice, lysine, all the stuff to help you fall asleep. And then it has a special peptide that's supposed to help you get back to sleep if you wake up in the middle of the night. Definitely made a difference for me on time changes. So if you hit the road warrior lifestyle again, I'll have to have some shipped to the Manhattan compound of the Kerr family,
which you get a little glimpse of here right behind us with the Concorde going on.
Yes, I like it. All right, let's talk a little bit about Hilton, and then we'll step aside and bring Mr. Kyle Potter, Thrifty Traveler, on. So a couple of things here from Hilton that I find interesting. One of them is what I would call the head scratcher, and then we'll talk about their new status level. So first, on the head scratcher side, they've changed the qualification tiers. So it used to be 20 stays. There were the few that has a stay path still, or 40 nights would get you gold status, 75,000 base points as well. So now instead of 40 nights, you can get it with 25 nights or 15 stays. And diamond drops from 60 nights to 50 nights. Now, you can get there via spend starting next year as well. Current diamond level, not the new diamond reserve, is $11,500 in spend. But before we talk about diamond reserve and the status level, I guess, we don't really see chains drop the qualification requirements of these lower tiers. Notably, there's not a ton of huge benefits for gold and diamond with Hilton, but I guess this one was just a head scratcher for me.
I think my overall comment was, or my first thought was, I think this is a right move that Hilton needs to do something here, because some of those status levels have become uncompetitive with the benefits of other hotel chains. And while my experience as a Hilton Diamond in the years I had it was I was always treated nicely, right? You're not going to get suite upgrades. You certainly had no avenue to confirm suite upgrades.
Right.
And then the breakfast benefit had been chopped quite a bit versus what it was. So from an elite status standpoint, in the way that I get treated at some other properties, right? If I wanted Hilton points, you can certainly get a lot of those with Hilton status and a Hilton card, and that's a great way to go and do it. But otherwise, as far as on-property treatment, I didn't feel like Hilton Diamond could compare with anything else. I think this is the right call, and I'm excited for Hilton to, recognize that something needed to be done with their elite status tiers. But proof is in the pudding, right? I can only imagine the work level that is required to go out to all of the Hilton properties that are owned, franchised, like all the different makeups that they have, and figure out how across thousands of hotels you have this standardized and accepted and funded. Like, this has got to be a more than a year effort plus. And man, the different committees that this has to get through. All kinds of stuff. Like, it's a monumental effort for them to get this far, which is great. Somebody's driving that ship in order to make it happen. And now it's just going to be really interesting to see, how the different treatments occur, from these different levels. And I assume, like you said, hey, if you spend $18,000 this year in 2025, that does not qualify you for the new status level. It's purely starting in January that you got to hit this. So we're not going to know for a while. Maybe somebody spent $18,000 a month with Hilton stays. And is it $18,000 and how many nights, or is it one or the other?
No, so you have to hit the 18,000 and you have to hit 80 nights. So the earliest we can see this
March
is late. It's exactly like mid-March.
Somebody's definitely going to live in a Hilton the first 80 days of 2026 to do this, and they'll be the first to say, like, I got this.
I feel sorry for them, but if they're a listener of this show, please write in. We would love to have you on the show in March to talk about that experience. I think, you bring up a good point about just the mechanics, and you and I nerd out on this stuff. I don't know how many of our listeners or viewers nerd out on it, but look, there's predetermined, amounts of points that these hotels are buying based on the number of elites that they get on an ongoing basis. And by lowering the status requirements for gold and diamond, they're in theory committing properties to spending more points, which probably required some level of renegotiation. And then obviously with the new diamond reserve tier, which we'll talk about here next, there's a higher tier there. So now those guests are going to get more points. And the hotels have to buy those points when those guests stay there from Hilton. And so there probably was some level of give and take between Hilton and the individual hotels to say, well, okay, you got to buy more points now. Here's how we're going to make that better for you. So pivoting to Diamond Reserve, new status tier, 40 stays or 80 nights and $18,000 in spend. The big pluses here, well, I say the headline plus is that this comes with confirmable upgrades. This means confirmed at time of booking, similar to what Hyatt is doing. If you hit this tier in a given calendar year, you'll get one confirmed upgrade. It's upgradable to a 1-bedroom suite for stays of up to 7 nights. And if you stay 120 nights, there's no dollar requirement tied to 120 nights, but if you stay a total of 120 nights in a year, that level would get you a second confirmable upgrade. I noted in all the reports that I read, it didn't talk about whether credit card nights were a thing there. But at any rate, definitely going to be staying in a lot of Hiltons for a lot of nights and spending a lot of money. So I guess, before I give you my 2 cents on it, what's your first impression of Diamond Reserve?
One single upgrade certificate is tough versus, what else is out there, even in the Marriott program where you have multiple nights. Because if this sounds like, hey, if you're staying 2 or 3 nights, that certificate's gone. So you got to stay 7 nights to maximize it. I just know very few people who stay 7 nights. To your point, man, I think it's just too hard to negotiate this with all the different ownership groups that, have to fulfill this benefit and the, revenue opportunity that they give up on this. So one single certificate before 120 nights, which is just a whole heck of a lot of nights, even for you. Like, I think, are you at 120 for...
No, I don't think I am. I'll look where we're talking. I think I'm probably at like 70 or 80.
Yeah, that's a whole heck of a lot of nights. So
yeah, I'm at 71 nights, and we're at middle of November.
Yeah, I just realized that actually that's another topic. Is the reason I did the Hyatt Centric in Dublin is like I'm probably going to hit 100 nights now for the year in Hyatt, which I thought I had no shot at after I moved, but that's not the case. So I think a single certificate is tough, man, because the other alternative to the single night certificate is I still think I take the certificate versus the other choice.
Yeah. 30,000 points or a second certificate.
Yeah.
The other benefit that we didn't talk about is guaranteed 4 p.m. late checkout. This does put Hilton on par with Hyatt in terms of late checkout. It really puts them fairly far behind from a suite upgrade standpoint. My 2 cents on this, couple of things. First off, I think you were being polite when you talked about the Marriott upgrade benefit. I would just say that I think Marriott Suite Night Awards are very questionable value. And I also don't like playing roulette with my family vacations. So confirmable upgrades are where I live. So this, to me, likely pushes Hilton, further ahead of Marriott. I already felt like they were a little bit further ahead in my book in terms of which top tier status I would go with. Where I run into trouble with this, because Marriott has their ambassador status, which has a spend requirement as well. Where I run into this, the same problem I ran into with ambassador. So if we just take at a high level the 80 nights and we divide that into the $18,000, that's an ADR or an average daily rate of $225. So before I go pull on that string a little bit, that there's so many limited service properties with with Hilton, and averaging $225 a night is tough. Now when you layer on, most people aren't paying cash for all 80 of those nights. They're taking a couple family vacations in there. So now you're averaging in some zeros. So you really need a cash ADR of like $300 a night. And I would just say, if except for a select few, that's a really hard bar to hit. Now, I mean, like me staying at Resorts World, if food and beverage revenue counts, things like that, I mean, then maybe that's a way to get ahead. But I mean, in most
still may not be close to $300 a night at the Resorts World.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, how many, I know you stay at Hilton's occasionally, but not a ton. How often do you eat at a Hilton?
I mean, same as I eat at any hotel I'm staying at, which is never, like, except for breakfast.
Right.
Like, yeah. Never.
Yeah, so to be able to ring up extra dollars besides room it's going to be tough. So I think this is going to be a very select few people that hit this, and they're going to be people who are mostly luxury travelers, in my opinion, because that's where you're going to get rates this high.
Yeah. They must have obviously done their homework to see like how many members do we want in this top tier level so that we can fulfill all these benefits. Therefore, the spend needs to be $18,000. What is Marriott Ambassador? Is it 25,000 for Marriott Ambassador?
I think it's 25. I'll look it up real quick.
25,000. And then United 1K is 18,000 PQP now. Is that right?
Oh God, I wish it was 18.
What is it? I mean, the number 18 stood out in my mind for another reason. I'm trying to remember who else is at 18 for something.
23,000 for Marriott Ambassador status. That's the first year, and 100 or more qualifying nights. So that's now. I mean, you got
that's
credit
a lot
card
more nights
nights
at a much lower ADR.
You are, but yeah, and I
not
believe
higher ADR.
I believe credit card nights count for Marriott, but for 1K, you're looking at 22,000 PQPs if you have 60 segments. Which, unless you're connecting. 60 segments is a lot of segments. Like, I wonder how many segments I have so far this year. Look at that while we're talking. I definitely have the PQPs. That's for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think if you don't have 22,000, I think it's if you don't have 60 segments, I think it's 28,000 PQPs on United.
Okay, 28,000, 18,000. Yeah, on that.
Yeah, and so like right now, it looks like I have, how many United flights do I have this year? I have top airlines by flights. I have 69 United flights this year. So I'm, just over that threshold. And I fly a lot. So
that's too much, man.
Yeah. So unless you're flying connecting, if you live in a hub, hitting 60 segments is tough. I mean, you did the road warrior life for how long this year? When did you move to New York? Summertime? Yeah.
August. Yep.
So 6 months, you should go back and count because all your flights were nonstops. I don't think you were, my guess is you probably were not at 30 segments on an airline.
No,
for the first half of the year. Yeah.
No.
So it's a tough threshold to hit. So to your point, like we'll have to see how this pans out. I'll be interested to see how people are treated at the status level and also be interested to see how many people actually hit it. I think, in some ways this could be tougher to hit than Marriott Ambassador status, but in both cases, this is a fairly small trench of people that are going to be hitting this.
I would agree. So that's why I'm interested. If it's a small trench of people, then it's got to be some good benefits.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, let's step aside for just a second. When we come back, we'll have Mr. Kyle Potter on from Thrifty Traveler to talk a little bit about Black Friday, a little bit about what we think we're seeing coming down the pike, including that almost canary in a coal mine of a Delta European award sale that they put everything in Europe on sale for next year. So be right back on the Miles to Go podcast. Hey guys, welcome back. Continuing the trend of swapping out co-hosts, we've now decided to do it mid-episode due to some travel schedules and complications. Mr. Kerr is off to Europe and Kyle Potter is joining us. Didn't get all three of us together at one time. However, we did manage to land a big news issue to tie up with Kyle. Just in time for our recording, Kyle, Hilton has decided that they want to muck around with all of their elite tiers. Welcome back to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, what great timing, even if we miss Mr. Kerr on this one.
Well, there will always be another opportunity, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what you guys are seeing on the landscape out there for next year and beyond. But I mean, look, as somebody who's both of us are Hilton Diamonds. When you look at this and you look at where Hilton has gone over the years with the value of status, I'd love to hear your impression of what you think about Diamond Reserve.
Great if you're spending 18 grand a year on Hilton, which is not me. I mean, you know what? It's fine. Ultimately, I don't think it really affects those of us who are Diamond by virtue of credit cards, which by the sounds of it is most of us, and there are a lot of us. Hilton really isn't subtracting anything. They aren't closing gateways to get a meaningful form of status, which you have to put an asterisk on because it's meaningful for Hilton. It is not meaningful in the objective meaning of the word meaningful. So I don't really see this as a big deal for anyone who isn't a big spender. I think for people who are truly brand loyal with their wallet to Hilton, there is some good silver lining here in that Hilton is actually doing something that moves the needle in some ways. But for the rest of us, it's fine. It's business as usual, I think.
Yeah, I think, I would agree that for existing diamonds, it probably doesn't make a ton of difference. And, I mean, outside of bonus points, I would say the value of Hilton Diamond status is, maybe it's unfair to say marginal, but it's certainly not as aspirational as, say, like Hyatt Globalist. I am curious about one other part too. This is the nerd in me. What did you think about them reducing the qualification tiers, qualification requirements for some of the tiers?
I'll be honest, I don't really know what to make of it, in large part because, for folks like us that don't go out of our way to spend to earn Hilton status, it doesn't really move the needle. I think it's going to make the ranks of status more crowded, but I think, the limited benefits that you get with Hilton status, be it through gold or diamond, let alone silver, says that it's nothing. It's nothing, I don't know. It just nothing here really excites me one way or the other.
Yeah, I would say the one thing I would add that I haven't covered, because we talked about this last week with Julian, and then Richard and I talked about it before you were able to hop on. There's this thought in my head of, it almost seems a little anathema to the path that Hilton has carved out. And what I mean by that is, Hilton boldly and confidently said, like, we are happy to give you top tier, or what used to be top tier elite status, if you pay us for this credit card. And a lot, as you noted, a lot of folks took them up on that. To lower the requirements is explicitly saying, we're going to give away something that we were charging for before. And some folks now who maybe couldn't have made it, or maybe they split between Hilton, Marriott, whatever, go, all right, well, maybe I can stretch to 50 nights. Now they don't need the expensive credit card.
Yeah, and I think this all comes with the backdrop of a lot of really nasty devaluations on the award chart side, of seeing free nights skyrocket from 150 to 200 and then 250,000 points cap per night. And you have to wonder just how much that degraded spending on Hilton cards across the board, or just on the brand. And I wonder if they looked at the math of what the requirements were and where members were falling short of that next step from silver to gold, and then from gold to diamond, and did some reverse engineering and said, you know what, if we reduce these, we can get it more in reach for people who are just kind of on the bubble, and make back some of what we've lost in the last year and change, which, I think the last time I was on the show, I made a full-throated case for why Hilton was challenging Hyatt for the throne of best hotel chain program, which, that take aged like a wet fart, man. So you got to do something. And this is not what I would have recommended Hilton do, sure, in order to kind of get some wins back and get people to re-engage with the program. But these people are not dumb. They might not do what we wish they would do that would benefit us personally, but they have far more data than either of us to figure out how they can get people to re-engage with their program in ways that are going to help them.
Yeah, for sure. And as a nerd, I would love to have all of that data to pour over, but we are stuck reading the tea leaves from afar. And when you mention the price of award nights going up, it's a great segue to talk a little bit about the Black Friday deal that you guys have coming out, because right before we had you on, I was talking about that great offer that you guys tagged for the Hilton Morea Lagoon, where shockingly rooms were under 100,000 points a night. And that's not a direction that Hilton award nights have headed in quite some time. Going from 6 digits to 5 digits is not really a common theme. So, we've got, over the past bit, you guys have launched a new hotel program, which I love sort of seeing mixed in with the rest of the alerts. There's definitely been some properties I've had to add to the mix. And I know we want to get to the Black Friday deal, but I also want to comment on something that I always feel like I should hit the button earlier to record and have stuff available in pre-roll. And yet I hadn't hit the button yet. But Kyle said something interesting. It's like, look, you guys know, listening to the show and watching the show, we don't have a ton of various sponsors on the show that we also talk about throughout the year, and Thrifty Traveler has been that for us for quite some time. And Kyle commented on the fact that, like, dating back to when you first got there, that there are still people paying $20 or $30 a month for a service that's gotten a lot more expensive, based on your philosophy.
$20 or $30 a year.
A year. My apologies. A year. for something that, you know, folks are paying a lot more for now because of this philosophy that you guys say, like, look, if you're in at a price before we raise the price, you'll hold that price. And I'm, you know, I don't have the $20 version, but I'm at least 2 or 3 price increases ago, and my price hasn't gone up. And just want to call out that great factoid that you shared with me before we hit the button. And I love that pricing philosophy. Folks get into the Thrifty Traveler ecosystem. They can have the confidence that whatever they're paying today is what they're going to pay in the future.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, we are incredibly proud of the premium service that we've built and expanding into hotels. We think, I mean, I'm very biased. I'm also not the one who's finding and sending these deals. So in some ways, I can compliment it and say that, you know, I am confident, we as a company are confident that it's the single best flight and hotel alert service on the market. But at the same time, you know, one of our truly sacred cows is that price guarantee, that whatever full price you signed up at when you signed up, that is your price for life. As long as you don't cancel your subscription, you will continue to pay that, which means, you know, for any of our existing premium customers, you're going to keep paying whatever that rack rate was whenever you signed up. So there's, it's a total non-negotiable for us. Like I told you before you did hit that button, you know, I've been here for now 7 years and counting, and we had not once entertained the thought, do we raise prices on existing consumers? It is just a non-starter.
Love it. All right. Well, let's get into the Black Friday deal. And then I want to pick your brain on some of the recent alerts we've seen and what you think that bodes for the future. But I think there's some really good stuff again for Black Friday.
Yeah. You know, we're doing a big Black Friday promo. It's live now as folks are listening to this, and it runs all the way through Black Friday, end of the night. So 50% off your first year of Thrifty Traveler Premium for first-time subscribers only, which means, you know, for just flight deals, that brings it down to $49.99 for the first year. You can get the Premium Plus bundle, which is flight deals and hotel deals that we've been talking about. So that brings it from $150 for the first year to $74.99. And then we're doing something a little bit different now that we're a year and change into the hotel service, is that existing premium customers can add on hotels to their current subscription, again, at half the price, not just for the first year, but it will be the first year and change. So basically what happens is for the rest of your current member year until you renew next, you'll get 50% of that prorated cost. And then you'll pay 50% for the next full membership year for adding hotels to your service. So there's a lot here for everybody to, at the very least, try it out if you haven't yet. And for people who are already in our ecosystem and getting flight deals, you know, hopefully a reason to give hotel deals a shot and see if it makes sense for your travels.
Yeah, and I love the thoughtfulness of having an offer that existing customers can take advantage of. I would just say, like I said earlier, I've added at least 3 or 4 properties to my dream board of places I really wasn't thinking about until I saw them on a deal alert for you guys. And then obviously just plenty of things where it's like, gosh, I wish I could squeeze that into my vacation. I've used a couple of hotel deal alerts. Travel's been a little busy for work for me lately, but I think it's a great add-on and very synergistic for what you guys do, for sure. We'll have some links on the screen and in the show notes for how you guys can find these offers.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're just looking for value anywhere we can. And, you know, fortunately, it's getting a little bit easier in some respects, less so on the Hilton side. But, you know, even after, you know, the nastiness that we talked about earlier, there's still great stuff out there. I mean, that Hilton Morea, which remains untouched even after some of the horrific increases that we've seen on the Hilton side, especially at some of the really great small luxury hotels of the world across the globe. You know, the Hilton Morea at 95,000 points per night. There's a great hotel as part of the SLH program, not just in Paris, but like a block and a half away from the Louvre. That's still, I think, 95 or 100,000 points per night. It's called like the Grand Hotel du Palais. I am not French. I can't speak French. Just somebody edit this, please, and make me sound smarter than I am.
I hate to say it, we don't do that, especially if you heard me try to pronounce some of the places where I went in Marrakesh, you know, a week ago. It was, as Richard, I think, is so eloquently put it, old white men mispronouncing foreign cities very poorly. So, everything on display here, Kyle.
I'm a happy member of the club.
Well, and for what it's worth, I really love how good you are at helping me segue, because when we say everything is on display here, and I know we want to talk a little bit about, the state of the industry and all that stuff, but I just want to say, like, as somebody who's recorded over 400 episodes of this show, I'm always here to advocate for our listeners and our viewers. I love all of them. I love how they support the show, and I want to make sure we give voice to when there are transgressions. And so for folks that don't know, Kyle and Gunnar from Thrifty Traveler started their own podcast not long ago, but a number of episodes there. And I do, I do listen to the show. And I just want to say, on behalf of all the Miles to Go listeners and viewers, I gotta be honest, Kyle, taking us back just a few episodes, when you're asked on the spot by Gunnar about your favorite podcast and you give the answer rewatchables and not Miles to Go, I really just, I got to be honest, a little part of me died inside.
You know what? First of all, Ed, thank you for listening. There are truly dozens of you. Look, I love this stuff. I love talking about it with you. I love talking about it with Gunnar on our show, which has been just like one of the funnest things I've done in my 7 years at this company. But also there comes a point where I need to shut that side of my brain off. And when I got to shut that side of my brain off, it's movies or it's hockey or it's something else. And so when I think about the things that I truly enjoy in my personal life, I just go straight there. And I'll be honest, I didn't even think of you, but I also didn't mention all of the other great shows like Dots, Lines, Destinations and The Air Show and all of the stuff that I listen to very religiously because I think it makes me smarter, which is not hard to do. But I listen to your show every single week, man. It's just, sometimes I need an outlet that isn't about travel and points and that I need some of that smooth brain content,
Well, kudos to you for handling the question well. I did not give Kyle any indication in pre-show that he was going to be grilled about his podcast choices, but here we are. So let's talk about, maybe I'm focusing too much on this Delta sale just to talk about the canary in the coal mine, but for folks that are not Thrifty subscribers or maybe missed it and don't have every single alert turned on like I do, Delta had an award sale recently that covered a massive amount of Europe. And it was, I might get the number wrong, but it was something like 20 or 24,000 SkyMiles in coach, which I just virtually unheard of for the value and the breadth of the sale. And so just makes me wonder, we've seen some capacity pull downs for next year, but it just makes me wonder what you think about, the next 12 months in terms of awards, because that was a pretty audacious sale.
It was. Look, we have seen and found a lot of really great Delta SkyMiles sales. And I, for one, will not stand for like the complete, utter SkyMiles slander that gets parroted around a lot in this space.
The Marrakesh stuff was great.
The Marrakesh stuff was great.
Was wonderful.
The sale after sale in economy and business class to Taipei over the last year and change has been incredible.
I used that alert to get to Tokyo.
You are very welcome. There is a lot of good stuff out there if you're willing to look, and I think especially if you're willing to look deeper than what Delta tells you it's doing. So I think what you touched on, what was so telling about this one was that it wasn't what we have tended to see over the last few years, which is select routes from Boston and JFK and occasionally some of the other big hubs to Madrid and Barcelona or to Zurich or something like this, very one-off. This was most of the major cities in Western Europe, from Dublin to London to Amsterdam to Rome and other smaller cities as well. But more importantly, it was Detroit and Atlanta and Minneapolis and all the way in Seattle and LA for 26,000 SkyMiles round trip, or 22,000 if you've got a SkyMiles credit card for that automatic 15% discount. And beyond that, connections from more than 200 U.S. airports, including some of the tiny regionals with Delta service, for one-stop connections into Europe like this. So, I don't know that I know for sure what it says yet beyond, what we've been talking about and thinking about a lot over the last 6 to 9 months, which is that if travel demand isn't outright slowing, it's clearly plateauing. And that is always going to open up more opportunity because airlines can't react fast enough to pull down capacity to respond to those changing dynamics, which means that there's always going to be the next deal, because deals, whether they're in cash or using miles, are driven by supply and demand. And just how broad this deal was, even though it was for travel in mostly January and February, some of March, this was a really big one. So it probably does say something. What that says about what's in store for the rest of 2026, I don't think we know yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, I mean, I for what it's worth, I think if my belief that there's a level of slowdown coming is correct, then I actually think this was a really smart move on Delta's part to say, we know that these are flights that were highly unlikely to pull down at quantity, so let's get a bunch of people committed early and give ourselves a basic level. It's, there's this philosophy that, do you listen to Airlines Confidential? Scott McCartney, Ben Baldanza's old show. So he had Alex Cora on with him and Maya a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about, Alex was leaning in. Alex, for folks who don't know, ex-CEO of British Airways, a lot of people that vilify him. But anyway, he was talking about how, the airlines need to get better at demand pricing and understanding how much they can charge for something. And in fact, Disney actually pivoted into this just a couple days ago, where now if you buy a ticket today for a Disney park in April or May and you're in early, somebody else might buy a ticket for that same park day a couple months from now, and they'll pay more because of that demand curve, which I think is an interesting place for Disney to go. But I think it talks a lot about Delta saying, hey, like, we're willing to try to fill some basic level on these flights and take a bunch of miles off of the balance sheet and then see where they end up for next year. And I think I certainly think it's emblematic of a larger slowdown, but at any rate, I think at least strategically, it makes a lot of sense for Delta to do this if the outlook is what I think it is.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think from specifically on the Delta side, as you were explaining this, I just kept thinking about maybe it's either the best or the worst headline that I've ever written, which is how Delta SkyMiles became the clearance meat of the airline industry, which we can just marinate in that for a second maybe. But the idea is that Delta is not opening the floodgates for people to redeem miles for whichever route that they want. They have very famously said that they're not trying to engage with the so-called bloggers of the world to try to, raise the esteem of SkyMiles for travelers. But they are, in a way, I think, trying to do that in a very strategic, as you pointed out, way, in that, one, they're offloading inventory that they believe is more likely to go out empty. That is the name of the game for mileage programs as a whole, or discounting fares. So that makes sense. But two, I mean, the entire internet last week was talking about 22,000 SkyMile round trip fares to Europe. And what does that say about Delta SkyMiles? And should I be earning Delta SkyMiles again, even though everybody has been calling them worthless? And this is a very smart, savvy way to raise the profile of SkyMiles without sacrificing seats that they could otherwise sell.
Yeah, and when I think about it, I did a little digging, and not a lot to be clear, but I did a little digging, and then maybe this takes things too far to the nerd world for folks that are listening and watching and just want a cheap flight to Europe. But 2024, Delta had revenue of $60 billion, billion with a B, and their liability on their balance sheet for miles is roughly $10 billion. So I mean, a pretty significant chunk. And so for folks that don't understand this piece of it, that's a liability for the airline. They give you miles, and they have to count internally what they think those miles will be worth when you redeem them. And so taking something like this, where they know the plane's going to have to go from Atlanta to Barcelona, and they, through their machine learning and their AI, they know that they're going to have, more than 50 empty seats on that flight. If they can reduce their balance sheet liability by punching out cheap tickets, that's a net positive for them. And if you think about, a $60 billion a year airline that has $10 billion in liability, yeah, I mean, they kind of need to keep burning down the liability. So from a business standpoint, I think there's a lot that I can be a fan of here in terms of what Delta's doing. From a customer standpoint, I mean, I don't really want to fly to Europe in coach. But for all those folks who this is the way they're going to be able to afford a family vacation, it's an incredible deal.
Oh, yeah. I mean, to put this in perspective, usually on a good day, on a truly good day, even in February or March, a round trip ticket, flying Delta is 60,000 miles on a good day. On a bad day, it's more than 100,000 miles round trip flying Delta to Europe and back. So, you're talking about a third, if not a quarter of the usual rate, which means that's a trip for a family of 4 instead of 1, or a trip that happens instead of not happening, period. So again, I just
100%.
want to come back to, if you've just written off Delta SkyMiles as completely worthless, you're not trying hard enough, or you're not enlisting help from your friends at Thrifty Traveler to help you find the ways to do this well and book things truly for a fraction of the normal price.
100%. And I would also say, just to draw a parallel, I fly United a lot, fortunately or unfortunately for me. Over 100,000 miles flown on them this year, well over 100,000 miles flown. And when I look at mileage redemption opportunities on a normal basis, they're not dissimilar to where Delta is with SkyMiles. If I want to go to Orlando from my home airport of Dulles, I'm going to, it's in that 1.2, 1.3 cents per mile range. And I would just say, and I could be wrong about this in terms of the data, you probably have a better idea of it than I do. When I think about the last 6 months worth of deals that I can remember on Thrifty Traveler, I mean, they're not really heavily skewed to United from a business class overseas to Europe or Asia standpoint. There's been a lot of Delta stuff, as you noted, because of that weakness in that Taipei route for them. And so we've seen a lot of stuff there. And we see a lot of foreign carrier stuff. And United's definitely been in play for some of that. But it's not like they're leading the headlines of all the deals that you guys are putting out. I would argue it's probably Delta in 2025. But I think comparatively, as people have this opinion that United and American's miles are worth more than Delta. I don't know that I have enough data points to unequivocally comment on American just because I don't redeem on them and pay for tickets as often as I do United. I would just say I don't think that the United value prop is really all that different from the Delta value prop right now.
No, I don't disagree, and I think there's a few important reasons for that. One, I think there still are plenty of opportunities for One World redemptions up at the front of the cabin and Star Alliance stuff at the front of the cabin and a lie flat seat across the globe as well. I think really importantly, United's strategy when it comes to the award side has pretty clearly shifted just within the last 6 to 12 months away from releasing that award inventory to partners and towards releasing it to their own members, especially their members who have either status or a United Mileage Plus card. That is where all of that inventory is going. And even when it doesn't, to me, one of the defining features of United as compared to American or Delta is that I think that American is one of, if not the best mileage programs within the One World Alliance. For all of its faults, I do still think that Delta is one of, if not the best, SkyTeam mileage programs, at least among the programs where, us Americans can easily accrue points. I don't think that's true of United. I think it's honestly one of the weakest within the Star Alliance. And when we do send out award deals for any Star Alliance carrier, if it's United, which again is happening rarely, but if it's Swiss, if it's Lufthansa, if it's TAP Air Portugal, if it's ANA, United mileage redemptions are always there, but they're always significantly higher than redeeming Aeroplan points or ANA Mileage Club miles or, whatever. You go down the list. And that is not always, in fact, I would say it's infrequently the case when we're sending out things that you can book with either Advantage Miles or Delta Sky Miles.
Yeah, I've said to a number of folks, just in terms of like rules to remember, if you're living in the domestic U.S. and you're thinking about flying Star Alliance somewhere else, you should start by looking north and seeing what you can find with Aeroplan. And I would say, even if we zoom in on that 6 to 12 month horizon and make it the 6-day horizon, I'm sure you saw the news from Gary at View from the Wing that it appears that United has decided to adopt this close-in booking tax, where all the close-in awards within 2 weeks now seem to be costing more money. So I'm not trying to rain on United's parade. I would just say your comments about Delta, I think you have to look at it from two sides. It's not just that there are pockets of value in Delta, it's that the other folks have come back to the pack too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I just want to stress, I think there still are great ways to use United miles if that's what you've got. And, for someone like you who is really tethered to Dulles or Houston or especially Newark, I mean, part of the problem here is that there is really no such thing for frequent travelers like yourself as free agency, because free agency means you're making a connection. Yeah. And a lot of us are stuck with whatever the game in town is. And unless if you're living in New York City or LA or Seattle, there is one game in town.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's fair. It's fair. All right. Well, I appreciate you stopping by, man. I think it's a great Black Friday deal that I hope people take advantage of. Like I said, we'll have links to it in the show notes. I hope that we can have you back on again soon, my friend. And maybe we won't say rewatchables next time. You just never know.
You've got it in my head now. I won't make the same mistake. Well, I'll probably make the same mistake twice. I won't make it 3 times.
Well, you never know. But hey, look at the bright side. At least you know you've got another listener.
There are dozens of you, Ed.
There are. Well, and that is probably a good segue to poke in. Even though we poke fun at Kyle, I would just say, if you enjoy content in this space, Thrifty Traveler podcast on all the podcast platforms, just click that subscribe button. You get to hear Gunnar and Kyle on a weekly basis. So, any fun travel coming up for you, man?
You know what? I have got a one-way flight to Hong Kong, courtesy of Getting High on our own supply, booking a Cathay Pacific business class deal, rarely bookable with Advantage miles through Seattle, and no way home yet. So leaving that one open, seeing what else comes up. And then, in the waning days of Alaska's partnership with LATAM, I booked my wife and I one-way flights through Atlanta to Lima to go to Peru for the first time. Nice. And again, leaving that open, seeing what tickles our fancy to come back late next summer. So yeah, we'll see. But I bet we'll do both.
I hope you do both. And I would just say, while we were recording, Foz from Dot Science and Destinations was trying to, pull me into, enable me to a trip to Senegal. And just a couple days ago, Seth was like, "Hey, you want to go to Malaga?" So the craziness is out there, and I certainly hope to be participating in it next year, Mr. Potter. Until we have you back on the show again, I appreciate you coming on. I have not been to Lima, so maybe if you do execute that trip, you come on and tell us what you think about it. But until we have you on the show again, and until we upload again, we've got miles to go.
The curveballs.